Ani Buju, Vanessa Gray Indigenikas, Amjanang Donjiba, Nishna Beni Dao, Makwan and Dodum. Hi, my name is Vanessa Gray. I am a Anishinaabe and I'm from the Amjanang First Nation. I'm also from the Bear Clan. I'm here today on behalf of Indigenous Climate Action. And I am very excited to announce the speakers today. And today we're also going to be holding space in a more traditional matter by only speaking if you have the eagle feather in hand. So when I announce each speaker, I'm going to pass off the feather by the by like each, I don't know what I'm trying to say, by the order of speakers. So I just want to say thank you for being here today. This has been a very busy week for all of us, especially those of us who have traveled so far, just to feel again rejected by RBC while playing in their courts. And I'd also like to acknowledge the land in a more traditional way again, where we acknowledge those animals who cannot speak for themselves. We acknowledge the water that we all drink and that keeps us alive today. We are thankful for the air that we breathe and all the teachings that brought us together today. I will start by introducing Chief Namox from the Wet'suwet'en Nation. He is a hereditary chief. Chief Namox.
Denny's 8 Saka's 8 Skyzy, as stated, I am Chief Namox. I also caretake the name of Chief Fleece, which is a high-ranking war chief. Our nation and what we've been put through, and you've got to remember, all of this is financed by RBC. You know, this Royal Bank of Canada, they fund the Royal Canadian Mounted Police. I don't know what is so royal about what they do to us. I went to England and I addressed the king and I asked that very question because I always have hope. Believe it or not, I'm an optimist. I always want something better. I know if we work hard, it will get better. But when you come to the Royal Bank of Canada's AGM and again get treated in this manner, it's hard to keep focused on who you are, what you want, and knowing you're doing the right thing when they don't have the humanity to address you properly, to let you speak, to listen to you. When they can say you've got 1 minute, 60 seconds to express what they do, that's not proper. And I want to remind people, it is your money that is upholding them to push these laws. It is your money that enables them to be the #1 financer of oil and gas productions, pipeline, all the destructive industries in this country. They are #1. They're top 5 in the world. I think that the people really have to realize if you deal with different institutions, we may get a better result. I am tired of going there and having Dave Mackay look at us and try to tell us that they're doing the best thing for everybody when 2050 is so far away, when 2030 is so far away, when what they've already done to this planet is happening now. So when we come here as Indigenous leaders, as humans, to address them, and you get 60 seconds to address what they do with their billions and trillions of dollars, that is not the way that any bank should operate. They bought HSBC because HSBC was going to have a greener plan for their bank. They bought it so they don't have to meet those standards. And yet they stand there and tell us about how great they are doing, how advanced they are. They're going to look towards green economies. But why 2050 when they're doing the damage today? When our people get arrested, removed from the land for simply protecting clean water, who we are, and knowing that they are assisting in taking away the power of the people, taking away the hearts, their voices, and with their money, and knowing that the very democracy of this country is being threatened by the money that they put into oil and gas, mining, forestry. The insults that were done, we should be getting used to it. 2 years ago, we came here to Toronto, the hereditary chiefs. When we landed, they made it a virtual meeting. Last year, we went to Saskatoon. We look up after the AGM, there's snipers on the roof. This year, they gave us 60 seconds to talk about that, to talk about the money that they are controlling doesn't have a conscience. The human does. So they're removing the human capacity that is there to make the calls on what happens to that money. We call upon all people, all businesses, withdraw your money from that bank. Find a better use for it, because obviously they are not listening to what you want done with the future. When they can only talk about the bottom line and remove the humanity that everybody needs to survive, then you got to remove yourself from that type of bank. When all they want to talk about is the very fact that if they can make a profit, they won't tell you what the cost is to you, to the human, to what we want, clean water, clean air, the freedoms that we need. We know as Wet'suwet'en, we are the template of what will happen to this country. By RBC being there, funding this, they are also funding RCMP. They create an arm of the Royal Canadian Mounted Police. It's called CURG. They rebranded themselves as CRU, Critical Response Unit. That didn't exist before 2017. But why doesn't RBC be honest and say that what they're doing in Canada is affecting the world? Why can't they take responsibility that their money is killing this planet? And why would they ever say that they are doing an AGM where they want to listen to shareholders? We were there as proxy holders. We weren't listened to, not in 60 seconds. We often ask banks to just listen, be human, take the future into consideration, not the bottom line. What is most important to us is our children and grandchildren, your children and your grandchildren. And when you get a bank such as RBC totally ignoring what they are doing to the world, then you need to speak up. Masai, Joe.
Miigwech. So now I will be calling Celine Isimbi, please.
My name is Celine Isimbi, and I am a student at the University of Waterloo and an organizer with Change Course. I am here today because I'm inspired by all those fighting extraction on the front lines across so-called Canada, because I feel deeply connected and in solidarity with African organizers back home on the front lines, fighting similar projects funded by major financial giants like RBC, far removed from the cultural and environmental impacts. Today, I am particularly thinking of those fighting the East African crude oil pipeline going through my ancestral homelands, a project that RBC supported through $1.45 billion in total energies between 2016 and 2020. I'm also here representing a national movement of students across so-called Canada, and as a student at the University of Waterloo, a key feeder for RBC, a campus that RBC recently made a $2 million donation to for a Bachelor of Sustainability and Financial Management program. While RBC continues to fund projects that put the lives of those here at risk every day and students' futures in jeopardy. They fund sustainable finance initiatives to greenwash their actions and impress young people, but students across all campuses see through it. And all across so-called Canada, students are taking action to kick RBC off of our campuses. 11 student unions at major universities representing 450,000 students have already called on major banks like RBC to immediately stop funding these detrimental practices. RBC's branches on 2 campuses have already been closed down due to student action. Business students now learn about RBC's hypocrisy in core curriculum courses, and we are just getting started. They tried to censor us in the AGM and tried to censor us on our campuses. Students across many university campuses have faced police and escalating responses from on-campus branches. RBC wants to shut down student dissent, and they are using fear of police and arrest to scare students. We won't be dissuaded. From Wet'suwet'en to campuses, RBC uses police and the state to shut down resistance. We are not going to stop organizing on our campuses, and in every space RBC attempts to greenwash until they meet our demands to defund the Coastal GasLink pipeline and TMX, respect free, prior, and informed consent of Indigenous nations, and to divest from fossil fuels. I would also like to add, regarding today's events, they won't listen or engage with us in the AGM rooms, so we will have to take it to the streets, as we did today with the outside mobilization, and on our campuses, and we will make you hear us. Your time is up, and the people will govern. The age of fossil fuels has gone. It is time to invest in sustainable, justice-centered energy projects and solutions. Frontline communities have the solutions. Indigenous-led governance is the solution. Your archaic practices, repression, and silencing tactics do not work. The power of the people is stronger than those in power, stronger than your executives, stronger than RBC, stronger than you, Dave McKay, and the rest of the executives getting rich off of our deaths and our community's destructions. And we call on you, people of conscience, to join us. Thank you.
Miigwech Celine. Next, I will call Sharon Levine.
Good afternoon. I'm here today because I'm trying to save the lives of the people in my community. I'm the director and founder of a faith-based organization called Rise St. James. This organization came through God. God touched my heart and asked me to fight for Mosa Plastics. I came here today to talk to RBC, but when I spoke, I didn't know what section I was supposed to speak in because I had a clicker and the clicker wouldn't work. And then when it did work, they couldn't get to me or whatever, but it was malfunction, I guess. Then I asked the question, but I didn't get an answer. I feel like I was wasting my time because I came all the way from St. James, Louisiana, to talk to these shareholders who are poisoning us. My community is dying because of people like RBC. They are out to make money. They don't care if they pollute us. They don't care if we don't drink clean water. They don't care if we breathe clean air. Where I'm from, we have 12 industries within a 10-mile radius. People are dying. Our water has benzene in it. Our air is polluted. Our soil is polluted. We cannot make a garden anymore. I have a friend of mine was diagnosed with colon cancer. I have my classmate diagnosed with liver cancer. I have 2 brothers with prostate cancer. And the list goes on and on. Our politicians are in the pockets of these industries. Our politicians, some of them don't understand the effects of the pollution. Some of them don't understand how people are dying, even though their family members are dying. They don't understand. They think that industry can just come in and they're supposed to open the red carpet for them. They don't realize we are the people, we are speaking, and we as a people will make a difference because we went to the EPA hearing on Tuesday, and they announced the Hans rules. The Hans rules, the standards are set so low. The industries, they're going to think twice before they come into St. James Parish. and throughout Texas and Mississippi and so on. So I have hope because of this Hans rule. Some of it is good, some of it is not to where we want it to be yet, but that's a start. With the chloroprene, the levels are so low until they will not be able to function at that lower level. So that's one way we're going to beat them. And we're going to beat any other industry that tries to come into my community. We are not going to take anymore. We will not be silent. And this will be the beginning of the end for all of this fossil fuel. Just like I said, 2024 will be a change, and this is the change. These people are not listening to us. So we are the people. We have to take our country back, our state back. We work together, and we can do it. But we got to stand together. We can't let these people dictate to us our lives and how we're going to be poisoned, because they are poisoning us. All this fossil fuel, if it's killing us, get rid of it. Find another solution. We don't have to take this. We are the people. We stand together and we're going to fight together, and we will not be silent. Thank you.
I just want to say it's so good to hear everybody and why they're here and everything that they should have been given the space to say in the annual general meeting. So yes, it's just so good to hear everybody's voices. So next I'm going to call Crystal Cavalier. Thank you. Good afternoon, Meku. My name is Crystal Cavalier, citizen of the Occaneechi Band of the Saponi Nation from Mebane, North Carolina, United States. I'm a mother of 5, water protector, and co-founder of 7 Directions of Service with my husband. I don't know whether to be sad, mad, angry. I have all these emotions pent up inside me. My message to the people of the world is I don't feel as an Indigenous person I was respected when I came here to the RBC. I am a community leader of my Monacan, Occaneechi, and Saponi relatives. And honestly, they need to have frontline people on their board. I felt that the words the RBC said are performative and will tokenize anyone for their optics. After I was interrupted while asking my question, I wasn't even given the respect to have the entire minute before being interrupted. Like, the woman was like, "What's your question?" Well, if you would be quiet, you would have heard my question. I was there to talk about their risk, their client for the Mountain Valley Pipeline in the Southgate extension. We've been fighting this mainline pipeline for 10 years, in the Southgate portion for 7. And now other pipelines are starting to come together and merge with this Mountain Valley Pipeline. My question was dismissed. They didn't give any thought to my question. It kind of reminded me of a scene from this Disney movie, Mary Poppins, when all these bank executives were sitting around the table and not listening, and somebody kept saying, "Give me, not give me my money." That's what I wanted to say. Give me my money back. We've always seen nature as a living entity with its own rights rather than a resource to be exploited and controlled. The RBC is funding poisons and toxins being blown into our environment and killing our fish, animals, and even our relatives. Our original instructions have been forgotten. Again, I travel across this border. They're investing in a company that does not use free, prior, informed consent and has been known to violate many human rights. I'm inviting all the RBC board and executives to come to North Carolina and see this pristine mountaintops that are being blown off and being financed by your company. And our sacred rivers are being bored under. We wrote to the United Nations Special Rapporteurs, and we did hear back from one from the Human Rights Commission, Office of the Special Rapporteur on Toxics and Human Rights. They have confirmed receipt of our submission, and they're going to start listening to us. Like Celine and Sharon said, we're going to have to take this to the streets. I'm asking everyone to join our movement, and we will not be defeated. We're going to stand up and fight this. Thank you so much. Jimmy Gwitch. I will call now Richard Brooks with Stand Earth.
Hello, everybody. My name is Richard Brooks. I'm the Climate Finance Director with Stand Earth. I think what we saw today is very different from last year. Last year, we faced segregation. My brothers and sisters with my Indigenous brothers and sisters and my Black brothers and sisters and other frontline community members faced segregation last year. And this year, we face censorship. You've heard stories already of that censorship, and I'm really disappointed with Canada's largest bank for disrespecting everybody who showed up and traveled so far today to hear their voices heard, to speak to management, to get their questions answered. Many of them, if they even got their questions out, did not even get an answer to those questions. And it's disrespect that we should not be hearing from Canada's largest bank. But it's not out of the ordinary. It's very similar to the approach that they take to how they finance their fossil fuel projects, how they go about their business. It's not one of listening and taking action and responding to the stories that people have, but it's rather steamrolling them and deflecting and ignoring. Last week, the CEO of RBC stated to the Canadian press, and I quote, "RBC can't get ahead of its own country. We can't move faster." He was referring to the energy transition and its pace in Canada. He has said repeatedly over the last several months that he wants RBC to be a leader and must provide the leadership that Canada deserves. I wanted to ask today if there was an opportunity to ask a question during the general Q&A. How do you square these seemingly opposing statements? We need Canada's biggest bank, its largest corporation, to drive the energy transition, to be in the driver's seat and not to be in the trunk. That's literally where they are sitting in terms of the energy transition. They are in the trunk and they are somehow sticking their foot on the brake at the same time. And what this means is phasing down fossil fuel financing and going even further than what RBC announced last month when it said it was going to put triple their amount of financing into renewables. We know from the data that is available, the publicly available data that Bloomberg New Energy Finance has compiled, that the energy financing ratio of RBC is amongst the worst of all global banks. For every dollar that they put into dirty energy, to dirty fossil fuels, only 37 cents is going into low carbon energy and renewables, when the ratio needs to be 4 to 1, $4 going into renewables and climate solutions for every dollar going into fossil fuels. Simply addressing one side of the equation is not enough. And even what RBC announced last month, a big number, $35 billion into renewables, sounds like a lot. That will only get them to a 1-to-1 ratio by 2030 at best. RBC is very proud of the fact that it's now going to be disclosing this data of how much it's putting into dirty fossil fuels versus renewables. But data is meaningless if you're not going to use that data to take action. We need RBC to be a leader. We need them to address this ratio and fix it and set a pace for the rest of the country. Because we can't rely on the voluntary action of banks, this is why we need our regulators to step in. We need our finance minister, Chrystia Freeland. We need our energy regulators and our financial regulators, like the Office of the Superintendent of Financial Institutions, to step in and say, enough is enough. We've given you enough time, banks and other financial institutions, to do what you can. You're not doing enough, so we're going to regulate you into action. What you see before you here today with the folks who have been speaking so far, and what you've seen outside with the rallies and the protests across the country, is a multiracial, multi-generational movement that is unstoppable. We are only growing in size and growing in power, and we will not stop until we change Canada's largest bank and we get financial regulation to even the playing field right across the board. Thank you so much.
Okay, so the last speaker we have is Chief. Sorry, you took my notes. Thank you. Our last speaker is Chief Stuart Phillip, here on behalf of the Union of British Columbia Indian Chiefs, or UBCIC. Welcome to the mic, Chief. And I'll pass you this.
For RBC's clarity, it's Grand Chief Stuart Phillip, President of the Union of BC Indian Chiefs in BC. Position I've held for the last 26, going on 27 years. And I want to let you all know that I'm proud to be here with you all today. And I want to thank each and every one of you for making the effort to be here, knowing what we're up against, knowing full well that we would be met with the arrogance and the indifference and the dismissiveness that was demonstrated by RBC today. The 60-second speaking limit was, so unreasonable for anybody to articulate a statement or position in 60 seconds. But we all know in this room that was deliberate. It's part of RBC's ongoing strategy to silence our voice, to suppress our message, and to continue doing business as usual. I could not help but feel the full force of their arrogance when I heard the president's concluding remarks. Very smug, very glib, essentially saying, we're the biggest financial institution, we're the best, we've got a huge asset base, we've paid out millions and billions in dividends, and we're okay, Jack. We don't really need to, seriously consider what's being said here today because we're so successful. And, that's frustrating. And it's also heartbreaking because it's the people in this room that have firsthand experience with the devastation caused by the invasiveness of the large-scale resource developments that RBC so heavily invests in. And we know firsthand the destruction it's doing within our territories and the harm it's doing to our people. Many people in this room have been to jail as a consequence of standing up for their rights, defending the birthright of their children and grandchildren. And yet we have to come here and be subjected to that abusive behavior on the part of RBC. But I admire each and every one of you. I was happy to see so many familiar faces this time out. And whenever we do gather like this again, I suspect it'll be the usual suspects that are here today. The last speaker talked about being relentless in our efforts, at being consistent. And I know that's absolutely essential. RBC, that's how they got to where they are. You can tell that they're, coldly calculated in regard to the bottom line, profiteering. And, when we're not present, they probably joke about us, and the emotion we demonstrate and so on and so forth. But I believe, as time moves forward, the land is working for us. And by that, I mean the climate crisis is causing such absolute devastation out on the land with respect to the wildfires, the, millions upon millions of acres that have burned, the flooding, the destruction, and of homes. We lost hundreds and hundreds of homes in British Columbia last year. A lot of those were high-end homes from upper middle class people, and they're very, very angry. And I believe as the climate crisis intensifies, those people are going to look for somebody to hang liability on. And they're going to look as far as oil and gas and also the banking financial institutions that made these projects possible without ensuring the proper standards were met in terms of protecting from these events. So I think as we move further down the road, at some point in time, we're going to be looking at a class action lawsuit. I'm sure you all read about the elders, Swiss seniors that filed an action with the European Human Rights Court and succeeded. And they advanced the argument that they felt that the authorities that did nothing in regard to safeguarding against this destructive climate crisis has, in terms of heat waves, puts them at risk for having heart attacks or strokes. And the court agreed with them. And I think that's just the beginning of what we're going to see as we move forward. So it's, it's absolutely not surprising that RBC is so arrogant. They've been here for 160 years and they've had everything their way for 160 years. Like the rest of us, they're going to wake up one morning and, they're going to realize that they were on the wrong side of this matter. And, I can't wait for that. I hate to say that, knowing full well, how utterly heartbreaking that devastation is. But somebody must be held liable. And certainly RBC and financial institutions bear a liability in that regard. So again, I want to thank you all for being here. I'm so proud to stand with you and, to know you all. And I look forward to seeing you next time out. Right, Lim. Oh, sorry.
Thank you, Miigwech. Okay, so I will just conclude our statements by reading the statement that I was not given the opportunity to say today in the meeting with RBC. I'm here today because we all collectively come together to speak the truth from communities directly impacted by this environmentally racist corporation, including the petrochemical state surrounding the reserve called Aamjiwnaang First Nation that I come from. What is the cost of business as usual while the chemicals these companies are responsible for are causing generational health impacts and the uncertainty of whether the air our families are breathing is safe or not? These daily concerns is what the Royal Bank of Canada is profiting from. To you, RBC, this disregard for the future of even your own families is just business. By relying on capital that is systemically institutionalized white supremacy and colonial enforcement of exploitation by companies financed by RBC. So that's what I would have said to RBC today if they gave me the chance. So this concludes our first part of today's talk. Now we are going to move over to the question and answer period, where I will hand it over to Jenna. Give you this and then maybe you can hand it off as you go.
Thank you so much, everybody. Thank you so much to all of our speakers. We're now going to move to our media Q&A. Media, if you would like to ask a question of the group or an individual member, please raise your hand and I will call on you. If I call on you, please identify yourself and let us know who you'd like to speak to. If your name is called, if media would like to ask you a specific question, my speakers, please come up to the mic so we can hear you. Okay, do I have any questions from media? Oh, hey, yes.
Hi, yeah, Carl Meyer, I'm with the Narwhal. Just want to say thank you for everybody's comments. Sometimes I hear from folks in banking this idea that pipelines or fossil fuel companies, they're just clients, and so they sort of push back on this idea that they're the ones who actually own anything. They're just supporting their clients, and they have these, risk assessments and regulatory issues, but in assessing each project on its merits. But essentially, in the end, we're just supporting our clients, and we're there for our clients. I'm wondering if somebody could talk to that idea of, this effort to distance themselves from the direct impacts of these projects.
Good.
When you get banks such as RBC saying that they're not responsible, they're only representing clients, but who created that client base? What created that client base? It was at the suffering of this planet and the people. That's how they remove themselves from taking any liability, such as Grand Chief had said. They can point, it's just the business. But why is the business killing us? Why is the business killing this planet? And why can they take that opportunity to distance themselves from it when it's untrue? We have cultures. That is their culture. Not taking responsibility, not taking culpability, and definitely not taking any look at the future of this world, this planet, and who we are as humans. So if you can distance yourself, you know what the next step is? Dehumanize. And that's what that statement does. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Miku, everybody. So I want to address that. So whenever the banks or insurance companies say that it's just a client, I always say you are the company that you keep. They do risk assessment on individual people who come for houses. They do redlining. They do all of these terrible things to just everyday people. But you're going to keep funding poisons. Why don't they do an environmental risk? If you are literally blowing the top off of a mountain, wouldn't you think that is a risk to Mother Earth? Like, why are they not using their common sense and their decency and their just humanness? Or are they just too arrogant to understand that? They're just two-legged. They forgot their original instructions or their way of being. And, I don't know if an amount of prayer will help them. But again, I'm pretty sure they have children. They need to know that this earth will get rid of us like diseases if they do not assess this risk that they're doing for these companies that are coming through our territories and harming the people. And I'm meaning not these greedy politicians who are getting bought and paid off. I'm talking about the actual people who live in the front lines every day, who go away to college and come home, and they come home to their people to help serve and protect. So yeah, you can tell them that they're not doing their risk assessment well.
Carl, did you have a follow-up question?
I know I have another question, but other people can ask.
Are there any other media? John?
Yeah. John Woodside, I'm a reporter with the National Observer. This is less a specific question, more I'm interested in reflection. But I wanted to pick up on this idea of the international, multiracial, multi-generational coalition that's being built and is building, I suppose. everyone's facing different projects, right? I mean, whether it be a pipeline or plastics or whether something else. But there's a shared struggle here, right? And so I'm just curious, this is an open question to anyone who wants to take it. I'm curious for reflections about this coalition that's being built and the efforts to stop it. In a little extra context on that is in the room today, one of the things we heard was that the protests, the land defense that we've seen has cost RBC clients billions of dollars. So, you know, there's this strategy of pushing the cost of these projects up, hoping to get RBC into the best. And now we're seeing this coalition really built. And curious what you all make of this.
Would anybody like to take this particular question? Oh, Celine.
To clarify, you're asking about the joint struggle?
Yeah. I mean, maybe a way to think of that would be like, are there, well, what commonalities, what benefit business bring, working together, standing together like this?
I think I will answer it with taking a look throughout history. Whenever communities anywhere faced any injustice, people stood up, people rose up. If you're to look, I grew up in South Africa. So if you had to look at apartheid during South Africa, the reason it ended was first, it was a financial risk. So the apartheid government could no longer uphold its oppression. And then secondly, people all over the world, not just in South Africa, came together and realized the harms that were being impacted on Indigenous South Africans. And they came together, they stood up, they boycotted, they divested, and they sanctioned. And then 1994 came, we got the first democratic election in South Africa. If you look at the civil rights movement, the same thing happened. Anywhere in history where people are oppressed, people are going to stand up, people are going to appeal to their consciousness. And what we're seeing right now is we are facing the impacts of the climate crisis. We have wildfires, communities are going without water for generations. It's not just one generation that's being impacted. This is a generational issue where generation after generation, people don't have safe, clean drinking water. I grew up in South Africa in a time where we had the drought that is occurring in 2018, and that was day zero. And we saw how systemic injustices and systemic legacies of apartheid impacted those who could access water, who could access clean drinking water. And so people anywhere are going to stand up when people are oppressed. And I think in this moment, we're realizing that we can't turn away from what's happening with the climate. And then also we can't turn away from what's happening to our neighbors next door. And people who care for their neighbors are going to stand up. And what we're seeing now is that these pipelines, financial institutions like RBC, are not just impacting what's happening in so-called Canada. They are financing projects in East Africa, in the Amazonia, across borders. These multinational corporations, Canadian multinational corporations, are allowed to, without sort of regulation, without any intervention, are able to then impact communities abroad. And we are making these connections, and we are standing up and we're saying, if you're not going to listen to us, if you're not going to hear what we have to say, if you're not going to allow us leadership in these spaces to make decisions, we are then going to take that power back. And anywhere in history, anything that has ever happened, from the women's rights movement to racial discrimination, anywhere in history, you'll see that people took their power back, and people said, if you're not going to do it, we will do it. And I think of the quote by Frans Fanon, who says that each generation must, out of relative obscurity, fulfill or betray its mission. And I think for students on campuses, we realize that it's our generation's mission to uplift the work that Indigenous frontline communities, land defenders, and water protectors are doing. And we understand that the institutions that we attend and that we go to that allow banks like RBC to come onto our campuses and manufacture our consent for genocide, manufacture our complicity through our tuition dollars, we are saying no more, and we're going to call out our institutions and kick these banks off of our campus. And so that's our mission, is to address the climate crisis, because the impacts are already being felt. My own community, my African community, communities here across Turtle Island have already faced world-ending scenarios from the time of first contact, and we have continued to fight back. We are still here. I'm still standing here. A lot of us are still here because of our ancestors who fought back, and we are just picking up the mantle that they left.
John, did you have a follow-up question?
I do, but I know Carl also had one, so you can bounce back to him, or if there's anyone else.
Is there any other media who hasn't asked a question yet? Okay. So we'll have one follow-up each, and then that's it. Okay, Carl, please go ahead with your follow-up.
Sure, I just wanted to, Richard touched a little bit on some folks who travel a long way to get here. To a number of you who asked questions that were either cut off or didn't even get to ask a question. I'm just wondering how personally that made you feel in the moment.
Yeah, you may recall when I spoke, I mentioned the fact that I had 50 grandchildren. And that was a deliberate sharing of that information. Obviously, probably a waste of effort on my part, but nonetheless, I wanted them to know and understand that this struggle for us to protect the environmental integrity of our territories and the lifestyle and birthright of our people is an incredibly personal struggle. And it's not in any way, shape, or form anything close to corporate decision-making based on the bottom line. It's very, very, very personal. We're talking about our very survival. So being cut off in that very deliberate fashion was very offensive. And it takes a lot of discipline, being a very vocal, outspoken people, to sit there and not stand up, and express what you're feeling at the moment. But we know we're on an unlevel playing field, and the price we pay for coming through the door is we're basically being silenced before we even get into the room. But we want to demonstrate by our presence that we're not going to let this go. This is the issue of our generation and generations to come. Martin Luther King Jr. said it best, there's no turning back. And as time moves forward, more and more people within society at large are going to wake up to this and realize that, these issues are real. They're serious issues. Mexico City's running out of water. There's 30-some million people live there, and they're running out of water. They're past the best before date already. And that's just a small example of what's coming at us. So when you turn the tap on and nothing comes out, or where your entire neighborhood burns to the ground, or the food prices get so high as a consequence of crop failures, the cattle industry goes down the tube because you can't grow feed. They're selling off their herds. It's going to get cumulatively worse and worse and worse. And then you're going to see people within the financial community themselves start to question what's going on. You're going to see divisions at the board level and whatnot. And as time goes by, we're obviously going to prevail because the fate of the future of our grandchildren's at stake here. And vicarious liability demands that everyone shares a liability in this story. It's not just at the high level of the banks or government. It's people that actually are out in the field and whatnot. So, it's very, very difficult work. It's heartbreaking, but we all know that, the future of our grandchildren depend on what we do or don't do. And that's why we're here, and that's why we'll be here next year. And, you know, they see us, they hear us, they don't like what we're saying, but, you know, in their hearts and based on what we're going to see this summer, you know, they know we're right and that they're wrong, that wanton destruction of the land is unsustainable. You know, no matter how much money they make, it's unsustainable. So we're going to win this one.
I just would like to say, I think the war has already been won. I think that by us showing up and speaking up, I think we're going to be more successful in what we're doing. Just like he said, they see us, they hear us. We're just like Crystal said, we go into the streets and we are planning something in Louisiana in Cancer Alley. And we're going to get people to speak out and tell what's going on in their community. But we're going to do it together. We work together and we pray together. And Satan is going to take these industries down. Satan already has fallen. Formosa is Satan. Satan has fallen. Formosa has fallen. It will not be built in St. James Parish. I know one thing, my grandson is being bullied at school because of the work that I'm doing. They want me to stop, but I'm not going to stop. But I have something for them that's bullying my grandchild, because God put this fight in me, and I'm going to continue to fight. And trust me, we are going to win. If something happens to me, he's going to take over. I know he's only 11, but he's interested in what we're doing, and he sees what's going on. And I feel in my heart, 2024 is going to be a change, a positive change for the people. People are going to come from different areas of the United States, different areas of the world. We're going to get together and we're going to fight Satan. Satan is going to fall. Satan is already down. He just don't know it yet, because we got the power. We are the people. We're going to come together as one and we're going to fight. And we're not going to let them keep us from speaking up. We're not going to let them take over our communities. We're going to be able to breathe clean air again. They had no business taking our clean air from us. They had no business taking away our clean water from us. We can't even plant a garden anymore. When I was a little girl, I grew up on a garden. Now we can't plant a garden because the soil is polluted. Just like I said, Satan has fallen and we are going to win. Thank you.
Is there any media watching online that would like to ask a question? I just want to acknowledge our folks live streaming in. None so far. None so far. Okay, wonderful. Well, we've had our 2 questions each from media. You got your follow-up, right? No, you didn't. Okay, forget that. Forgive me, please. Please ask your follow-up.
Yeah, mine will probably be brief, although we'll see once I get going. Wanted to ask about, you know, so I was in the room and like you, and what I heard was a lot of misleading statements around climate science, around Indigenous rights. And, you know, when I think it's worth highlighting, right, that misleading statements are wrong on the face of it. But when you're talking about the shareholders, I'm wondering here about, is this deceiving shareholders about the reality of what's going on the ground? I know I heard a couple of things, but I'm sure there's things he said that I missed that maybe some of you were particularly either offended by, or, you know, found yourself with your jaw open, wondering, like, did you really say that? Yeah, I guess what I'm asking here is, did you hear anything that was inaccurate, a lie, misleading that you want to highlight right now?
When I was sitting there, and of course we're all offended, the duties that we have, the way that we're raised to carry on the duties, we're not supposed to be disrespected in that manner because we are not supposed to treat other people in that manner. But just to kill time and make sure that they had everything burnt off the clock, like he would make statements that, and this is Dave Mackay, that 17 out of 20 bans approved for the CG. That's got nothing to do with finances. That's only killing time. And why did he not let us respond? I have elected chiefs right here that never signed on. The elected chiefs, you got to remember that elected chiefs, they have power within the boundaries of a reserve. The nation itself belongs to the houses, the clans, the chiefs who are the head push to speak on that behalf. And yet to kill time, he did that. So I'm not even sure why he brought that up. And I don't know what kind of a football player Taylor Swift is. What does that got to do with finances? I'm sitting there and I'm wondering, like, why on earth would a name like that come up when we're talking about a love story? That's why we're here. We're talking about a love story. Love story between us and this planet. A love story between us and humanity in the future. And then for them to do that, not only insult us, but make us feel so foolish that we even felt like we wasted more of our life by being here. If I was ever in that position, I would never, ever speak in that manner or tone, because he is making a lot of money to sit there and waste our time, the shareholders' time, because we were there with proxies. And if this is the best that they could do, as the largest financial institute in Canada, I would find new leadership. So yes, it was extremely insulting, but it gets to the point of ridiculousness where you have to have humor, because it does not make sense, because they have no defense on what they're doing. Our defense is this: is love. Love for humanity, love for the future, and love for this planet. I hope that answers you.
Thank you.
So I don't have as long a history with RBC and the things that it says as some people in this room. But on terms of misleading statements, what I would say is just a reminder to everybody that RBC is the only Canadian bank right now that's currently under investigation by the Competition Bureau of Canada, which is a federal law enforcement agency, for misleading consumers. So what I wanted to say was, sorry, I'm having a disease spell. Sorry, it's okay. Sorry, just a second. It's all good. Anyways, sorry, as I was saying, I'll start again. Just a reminder that they are the only bank in Canada that is under investigation from the federal law enforcement agency, the Competition Bureau. I think this is a first step towards what we will see in the future in terms of litigation against the banks for the statements that they're making in regards to consumers and the statements that they're making in regards to investors as well. When a CEO issues statements that are intentionally misleading, that are intentionally deflecting, you are getting very close to a violation of securities law. You're getting very close to a violation of competition law. There is a movement right now, and our federal government is examining the issue of increasing and expanding the scope of the Competition Bureau to make it stronger so it can better enforce the issues around greenwashing. We know RBC is one of the largest greenwashing banks in Canada. They have an incredible marketing program. They like to say that they are climate leaders. They throw out numbers like $35 billion worth of new investments coming forward in climate solutions. tripling of investments in renewables. Lots of great numbers out there. Those are misleading numbers because they don't change the fact that they are Canada's largest fossil fuel financing bank. They don't change the fact that this is a company that continues to issue loans, lines of credit, do underwriting of new debt and bonds to all of the projects that you've heard about today, plus countless other projects that are going forward. That is not advancing the energy transition, and it is at odds with their public statement about being a climate leader. So I think they are getting pretty close to the line in terms of entering into issues of legality. And there are definitely lawyers who are examining this issue very closely, not only in Canada, but in other markets as well. We've seen a wave of lawsuits against fossil fuel companies across North America as a result of the lies that they have been telling for years and the damage that they've done to communities. And I believe that banks like RBC and other financial institutions like pension funds are up next for those lawsuits. Thank you.
If I understood the question right, was did we hear anything in the room that wasn't true? And interestingly, given my poor hearing, I'm pretty sure I heard a whopper. I was sitting there and I heard the president begin to articulate what a wonderful, successful project Coastal GasLink was. And he went on to talk about how 17 out of 20 First Nations communities were on board, and he sprinkled in a few hereditary leaders and said it was an incredibly successful project. They had full support, and it was the right decision to make. And we all know that's just not true. For those of you that are unaware, band councils have jurisdiction over the reserved land base, which are very tiny little pieces of land. The nation itself, the hereditary leadership, has jurisdiction over the vast entire territory. It was the hereditary leadership and the people that opposed the project. It wasn't the band councils. They were the first ones to sign on. They were tripping over each other to get their name on the document. And of course, you know, they received benefits for doing that. But I thought that the way the president brought that forward was so manipulative and was such a distortion of the reality. You know, for goodness sakes, there was a war up there. It was global in nature. Wet'suwet'en Strong went around the world. People were outside embassies all around the world with placards supporting the Wet'suwet'en people. They were attacked by paramilitary forces with assault weapons, you know, helicopters, drones, and whatnot. I've never seen such a incredibly abusive and dangerous use of force. And there he is up there talking about, and shareholders that are online and that don't know any better. They think, well, isn't that nice? Isn't that nice that the Indians and RBC are so close? So, you know, I was waiting for an outburst from NAMOX. You know, I thought somebody's gonna jump up and, you know, say the BS word, but at any rate, that's my story about the Whopper.
Miku, I will say that I too am in shock, right? From that whole statement about the indigenous people. It did sound like all of the indigenous people was like, yay, yes. No, to me, that's just, I don't know, it is BS. And we heard the Wet'suwet'en cry all the way to Occaneechi land in our community here in North Carolina. And we wrote letters of support, and we had the Meherrin Nation write a letter of support that said we stand with the Wet'suwet'en. And that's important because, like I said, these people who are bought and paid for by these gas pipelines, they don't speak for the people. And for this guy, Dave, whatever, he should not be making those idiotic statements. Like, that is just ludicrous, right? And we're not a monolith. Like, he just kind of glossed over the whole thing. And being an indigenous woman from so-called United States, like, don't do that. You guys have the power in your hands. Stand up and be courageous for once in your life. Just stand up and take a step out of your comfortable zone and say, we're not standing for this anymore. You keep having all this lip service. Have at it. Commitment. My husband said a man has two things: his name and his commitment. And you have committed to get off of fossil fuels. Do it now, not 2050. Do it now. I want to see it in my lifetime when my children are growing up and I'm elderly. Now is the time. So yeah.
All right, so that is going to conclude our media availability. Thank you so much, everyone who came, to our speakers. Thank you so much. It was so wonderful to hear from you. And media and everybody else who came, thank you so much.